I think that all the limitations that we feel in a real sense, in a mental sense, are all given and prescribed by us. I think, of course, the only thing that can limit you is you. But I think it's not even about the limitation. It's about the space that we give ourselves and the definitions that we place ourselves under. I think in a lot of ways, the more you think you are, the less you can be. And I don't mean that to say we shouldn't have any definition for ourselves, but we need to open ourselves to the possibility of more definition. I think when we keep ourselves open, we allow ourselves to actually grow. And I think a lot of us want to grow. A lot of us want to find love for ourselves, find love for our environment, and learn to have some sort of nice relationship with the world around us. And I think the only way to have that sort of relationship is by allowing it to exist. And I think the only way to allow it to exist is to sort of allow yourself to stop being so preoccupied with the notion of yourself. And I know this is sort of like a grand idea, at least it is in my head, about, letting yourself go. And I don't mean that to say get rid of your identity, but our preoccupation with ourselves is the cause of a lot of suffering in our own lives. And I think, of course, we need to be introspective, but I think introspection and preoccupation with self are two different things. It's a difference between asking yourself questions and then thinking everything is about you. I think it's about the conversations that you're able to have with yourself and not necessarily the stuff that we just define in our head. I think a lot of times we try to define who we are from our past and our thoughts about ourselves when who we are is more easily expressed than it is thought. So if we want to give ourselves a chance to see who we are and do all that, it's about the questions we ask ourselves in the present moment. How am I feeling right now? What do I want to do right now? And knowing how you feel about what you want to do right now and where it leads. If we want to get anywhere, we have to start where we are. And that's not to say you have to just start building where you are, but you have to bring yourself to where you are so you can bring your goals to where you are. A goal without action is always going to be just a thought. And if we're constantly just thinking about the past and thinking about the future without doing things in the present, then all we're doing is thinking. All we're doing is thinking and not actually moving towards our goal. Giving yourself space in this sense, or giving yourself a chance, or giving yourself perspective, or giving yourself, your life back, is about your ability to sort of not take yourself personally, not take life super personally, but make it intimate. Learn how to appreciate yourself and the life that you experience. And I think the easiest way to do this is to actually feel appreciation whenever you get the opportunity. Whether that be for people, whether that be for yourself, whether that be for just being alive, just anything you can think of. And learn to vest yourself so deeply within your own gratitude that that's mainly what you experience. And that's what your mind defaults to. I think we're addicted to negativity at sometimes. We're addicted to the way our mind used to be. And it's not necessarily an overt addiction that we're choosing to indulge in. Rather, we've convinced ourselves to be a certain way. The more we think we are, the less we can be. Once we drop this idea that we have to remain stagnant and have to remain as we have been previously, we allow ourselves to emerge as we actually are. We allow ourselves to continue to grow with the moment, not because of the moment, not because of situations, but because of us. And then the situations that we encounter in the real world actually will grow with us. And in recognizing that growth and appreciating it, I think all we do is inspire more. Because then it's not really about our success or anything or where this leads or where this blah, blah, blah. But what it does. What it does for you and how you allow yourself to be within it. Like yesterday I was having a conversation about like creativity and expression, especially like centered around my YouTube channel. Because people ask like, how do I remain consistent? Like, and how did I do that in the past, even when like it wasn't getting any attention, stuff like that. And for me, it was just like love of the craft. And it wasn't always like that, I'll say. But once I contented myself with actually appreciating what I do solely because I want to do it and solely because I know it impacts me well and it has the potential to impact others, I was able to let go of my expectation or my desire, my need for things to look a certain way, for me to feel a certain way. If we change the reasons and intentions why we do certain things and learn to vest them into ourselves and just doing things for our own positivity, for our own expression, for a chance to actually see ourselves, I think that's when we actually are able to be within the moment with what we're doing. Sometimes we worry about our failure. We worry about fear itself. And in that worry about fear, we perpetuate it. We give it an actual space in our head to take up space without letting it go, without letting everything go in a sense, and allowing things to be as they are and allowing things to be as you wish in a sense. Allowing your mind to actually get back to the present moment, like doing meditation, affirmation, doing art, whatever things make you feel like you bring you back to yourself, and then implanting positivity. I think sometimes when we have negative thoughts, we try to just instantly counteract them with something positive. And I think it doesn't always work like that. Because the best attack, I feel like, is always playing no defense. And if we're constantly defending ourselves against these negative thoughts in an overt, oh, I have to fight it with positivity way, we're embracing this idea that negativity is a strong thing, that this negativity that we're feeling is stronger than the positivity, or it takes some type of effort to sort of combat. Whatever we convince our mind that we need to do, we will have to do. If we convince it that we need to have some type of overt, strong positivity to fight the negativity that we're experiencing in our head, that's what we're going to have to do. And I'm not saying you have to convince yourself that negativity has no impact, but you have to recognize that all the negativity you experience is because of your perspective. It's because of what you allow to be negative and allow to etch onto your character. And I don't even think it's just about acknowledging the negativity. It's about us living in negativity, us living in those feelings inspired by what we see that's negative. And I think in embracing what you can be and letting yourself go, we sort of let go of our attachment to these ideas of negativity. We let go of our attachment for feeling a certain way depending on a specific external circumstance. And I think once we let ourselves go in that way, we no longer are defined by the circumstance. We sort of allow circumstances to be as they are, and we continue to change in our own positive way, depending on what we vest within ourselves rather than what the world vests in us. And I've been saying this a lot in my recent videos, but our internal world, our internal perception is what creates our external world. Not necessarily in an overt sense. It's not like if I just imagine a blue Lamborghini outside of my front yard, it's going to appear. But more so, when I see something negative in the world, and I myself am positive, and I myself am creating and giving positivity, then even if that thing is negative, and I can acknowledge that thing is negative, it won't make me negative. It won't take away what I'm experiencing in the moment just because of some, relationship it should have with myself. And I think some of these relationships and negativity and the things that make us feel negative are things that we've been taught. You're taught to feel negative about your shortcomings in here. You're taught to feel negative about what you don't have. They want us to consume. They want us to constantly be buying stuff and making us think that our happiness is built by external things when it's really about your internal perspective. If you hate yourself truly and you have everything, you're still going to hate yourself. It's always about learning to love yourself even when you have nothing. Not so it can just fall into your lap, but so you can actually appreciate the experience of being human and being you without being dependent on certain things to be aligned. Expectation takes us away from our freedom. And if we constantly think we're waiting for some sort of salvation, some sort of thing in order to be happy and sufficient where we are, then we're never going to feel sufficient where we are. Even if we get certain some things, I feel like until we've actually accepted it within, we're constantly going to loop back. Because then when we get something positive, we're going to be like, ooh, one, do I deserve this? Or two, maybe this is just a fluke. Or maybe this, that, and the other. All things that sort of align with the idea of worry and fear. And I think if we want to get past that worry and fear, it's not necessarily about our overzealous thought, but our constant affirmation and realization that we are as we choose to be in a subtle way. Not necessarily an overt choice, but what our subconscious choose. And our subconscious, I feel like, chooses based on what we give it. Based on what we're able to feed ourselves and give to the moment and give to the idea of ourselves. If we don't do that, then we're constantly, I feel like, grasping at straws, because our definition will constantly be based on something that's not actually accurate to the life that we live, and more so accurate to what we experience in our head. And if we want to live in the world, then we have to learn to take a step forward from the mind. Because if you live in the mind, how are you going to live in the world? I feel like all of the quotes that I have, all of the ideas, all allude to the same notion that we have to learn to be present. That we have to learn to be where we are in order to experience what we have yet to experience. Otherwise, we're just going to keep experiencing the own mental projections of our past and things that we want to escape from, perhaps, or things that we actually don't want to constantly experience. And I think we've convinced ourselves that these things are what we have to experience. This is just part of who I am. This is just part of the way I think. When we really need to open the door to more of us. And that doesn't mean blatantly ignoring that thing. That doesn't mean kicking it to the side. I think that all negativity that we have inside of us can't necessarily just be cast away. We have to face whatever it is that we want to change. Otherwise, we're not going to see the ways that we can change it. Or we're not going to see the ways at which parts of ourselves that are seeking out change want to be changed. We're not going to be able to have a chance to really listen to ourselves. But once we do listen to ourselves, once we do invest positivity, once we let ourselves go, then all that remains is a subtle curiosity, a subtle happiness with the life that you're living, and recognizing that you don't know what's next. Everything is always on the cusp of what you have yet to experience. And there's such a freeing, liberating, and loving feeling about that. I think that might just be because I'm choosing a perspective that's not dependent on external circumstances in order for me to be happy. Instead, I feel like I'm trying to learn how to be happy where I am. And in that way, regardless of what I encounter, and recognizing that I have more to encounter is a beautiful thing, because there's more opportunities to appreciate things outside of myself. There's more opportunities to appreciate myself when something negative happens. I feel like when you see something good in the external, it calls for appreciation. When you see something bad in the external, it calls for appreciation of the self. One, because you are separate from it, because you can acknowledge that that thing is negative, but it doesn't have to impact me, and be grateful for yourself for treating yourself like enough of a friend to actually have that perspective. And in having that perspective and giving yourself some type of positivity when facing negativity, you open a lot of doors to see past it. I think when we face it and don't do that, then we're succumb to the negativity, and we are perpetuating this idea that how we feel should be dependent on external circumstances. But if we can recognize as people that we can't control what we can't control, and there's a lot of things in this world that are out of our hands, then we shouldn't leave our feelings about ourselves and our feeling about the world and our comfort with the world up to random chance and quote unquote luck. I think we have to consciously sometimes create our own luck. And I think it's through our perseverance with our positivity and our positing good things about ourselves and giving ourselves an opportunity to exist, giving ourselves a chance to be here so we can actually see the opportunities that lay in front of us. Because if we're not here and we're just stuck in our mind and we have some type of opportunity to progress to the future, all we're going to do is be referencing the past. Because the mind doesn't conceive a future. The mind can only reference the past and move forward unless we implant positive thoughts ourselves. Unless we imagine the future that accommodates us and give ourselves a chance to feel it now. Feel grateful for it now because it's going to happen in a sense. Not necessarily in the sense of it has to happen, but in the sense of if you can recognize it's humanly possible, then you too can do it. I think our minds and ourselves, our desires are all attainable so long as we actually go out there and attain it. Getting stuff and achieving stuff is almost the easiest thing to do. All you have to do is put your mind to it and do it. You want to be an author? I want to be an author. All I have to do is publish. And that's something I recognize I can do because there's plenty out here who have done it. And why shouldn't I be able to? It's about not demeaning yourself in your head and not worrying so much about whether or not you're actually able to do something, and find out and recognize that there exists possibility, and why should you demean your abilities and your overall capabilities to do anything? There are plenty of stories out there with the most famous people, the most successful people starting from nothing. Not because they were just underprivileged and then there was some crazy stroke of luck, but because they believed that they could achieve something that was out of line with what they were currently seeing. So if we give ourselves a chance to line ourselves up with things that we don't currently see and learn to appreciate and love ourselves regardless of the circumstances that we're in, then we won't have to be so much of a something. We won't have to have strict definition for ourselves. We allow ourselves to encompass pretty much everything that we experience, because I feel like we weren't meant to preoccupy ourselves with the notion of who we are so much so that we're not able to experience what is. I think we have to recognize our relationship to everything inside and out. And if we don't do that, then all we're doing is experiencing our own negativity at times. And I think you do only experience yourself, but it's not necessarily just experience of self. I think we experience what we give. We give appreciation to a situation. We experience that appreciation and that good feeling. We give appreciation to ourselves from negative situations. We experience that appreciation. Or we experience the negativity if we give into that. Everything is always your experience. So it's about catering your perspective to actually allow your experience to accommodate you. And I think manifestation lays on the other end of not having expectation and having a perspective that accommodates you and working towards it. Recognizing that a goal without action is just thought. We have to align ourselves with our goals, not necessarily just in a mental sense, but recognizing that some things are brought into your life via your own creation of it. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you guys are taking care of yourself to the best extent. It's a lot on the way. Summer's coming. I'm almost free academically. So thank y'all for bearing with me. We're about to get pushing, y'all. And